I'd like to first discuss Nick Marcatelli's invocation speech quickly. He mentioned about people who go against the grain, they never give up, and they always face against adversity. These people are so important to society because they find new ways to accomplish tasks, they create new paths for other people to follow, and they open up a new world of possibilities. Abraham Lincoln is always a great example. He was an altruistic man who always worked selflessly for others. However, a more modern example of someone who went against the grain and never gave up was a man named Sir Roger Bannister. Now, has anyone heard of him? Oh, this is a perfect opportunity to learn. So, Sir Roger Bannister was the first man to ever break 4 minutes in the mile. Now, we've all ran miles before, and to get a better understanding of how fast that was, next time you go to a gym and you go on a treadmill, set the speed to 15 miles per hour and try to hold that for 4 minutes. And that's roughly the speed he went to. Or another example is, go on the track, run 100 meters in 15 seconds, and repeat that 15 extra times. This sub 4 minute mile at the time, which was in May 6, 1954, was a significant accomplishment, not only just in the running community, but in sports history as a whole. Because it was not only difficult, and increasingly difficult at the time, but there was also a very big psychological barrier to it. So why is it that 60 years after it happened, we still talk about it today? What makes it so special compared to all the other sporting moments that happened in history? And we have to look back at the history of the mile. So the mile was officially recorded in 1912 by the International Association of Athletics Federation. It started off as 4:12, and every few years or so, the time dropped until around 1945, it got to a staggering 4 minutes, 1 second. Now, unfortunately, the record remained unbroken for 10 years. Numerous athletes, world-class athletes, tried to take a crack at it, but always fell short. And as a number of attempts to break that, to lower it further down, failed, people started to believe that it was no longer possible. It was a human impossibility, and even scientists hypothesized that if someone tried to run that fast for that long, they would die from a heart attack. Yeah, it's tough. Sorry. So, Roger Bannister, he was another fellow elite runner, a prodigy actually. Because he was a medical student at Oxford College, he only had 45 minutes a day to train for races. However, within a year and a half of training, he was able to run a 4:24 mile. He obviously showed very big potential as an Olympian athlete, and eventually competed against the best runners in the world. However, after a disappointing 4th place finish at the 1952 Olympics, he decided to take a crack at the 4 minute mile. Now, scientists believed at the time that the best conditions for the mile was a clear and sunny day, 55 degrees, a large stadium filled with thousands of people. But he chose to run it on a cold, windy day, rainy, and on a track with only a few hundred people. So it wasn't the best conditions, but his determination wouldn't stop him from doing what he wanted. He started the race with 2 of the best 800-meter runners in the world to help him pace that mile perfectly. He started off the first 2 laps in 1:59, which is exactly the pace you need to get to that 4 minute mile. Now, on the 3rd lap, he started to feel a little tired. He fell off the paces for a bit, and he started to lag behind. he realized that if he wanted to get under that 4-minute mile, he had to get back up, he had to keep pushing, and he had to overcome the adversity that was standing before him. He gets back with the Pacers and crosses the third lap in 62 seconds, making the 1,200 meters 3:01, meaning that he had to run a 59-second last lap in order to get under 4 minutes. Now, the only problem was the Pacers dropped out at that point because they failed their job. They were exhausted and were no longer able to carry him. So now it was not only a battle against him and the clock, but also the world at the time, who were so skeptical that it could not be performed. However, with his unwavering determination and the roaring support of everyone who circled around him, he propelled himself the last 400 meters with all his willpower and energy, and gave everything he had on the track and crossed the finish line, barely holding on to his form, legs shaking and lungs completely out of breath. He collapsed. He was about to collapse until his colleagues caught him, who were waiting for him at the finish line. We still haven't learned the time yet, because at the time, people hand timed it, and then we had to find the average times of all of it.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes later, the announcer goes, "It was a historic day. Roger Bannister wins the mile race with a time of 3. But he gets interrupted because there was a large roaring cheer of support, knowing that Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. What does this mean for us today? It's about learning to overcome physical and mental barriers. Whether it's making a speech up here right now, whether it's accomplishing a difficult task at work, if you can overcome that kind of barrier, then that means you're more capable of doing what you wanted, and a whole new world of possibilities open up.